All right. Well, thank you all for being here. I hope our other friends get to join us here in a minute. But Ms. Gwen, your lizard story is the perfect transition because we have Stephanie. Stephanie is with Carolina Beach State Park. She's a park ranger, and she's going to be talking with us about the park. So it's perfect. I'm sure they have plenty of them out there.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know that they do push-ups, but that's perfect. It's like you do.
But you know, when you think about it, whenever they don't showing that what they call it, showing their blanket, that what the old people call it, when they be doing like that, it does look like they be doing push-ups.
Yeah, so I think what your great grand nephew or niece saw is a Carolina green anole, and what they do is they have that big pink flap that they stick out.
Yeah.
The technical term is called a dewlap, but I like blanket too. That's also great. But when they stick it out, they do look like they're doing push-ups.
That's awesome.
They do. I never thought about it.
Yep.
I'll look at them today because y'all was on my porch, so I'm gonna look at them today and see if they're putting some push-ups. Yeah.
That's their defense mechanism, and they're just trying to scare you off, or they're also trying to show it to either another anole, or they use it also to attract mates as well.
Okay.
That is awesome.
Sure
Well, Stephanie,
him off.
Yeah.
I turned on the hosting for you, so if you have a presentation,
Okay.
you should be able to play that, and it's all yours.
Okay, so we may be in COVID, but I really haven't done a whole lot of these, so sharing my screen might take me a second to figure out, but I'm gonna guess this little share button. Okay, yep, okay. Okay, do you
There
see
you go.
Zoom? Okay. Okay,
Okay.
and y'all can see this first slide, right?
Uh-huh.
Yes,
You see
ma'am.
this thing too? Let me close that. Okay, we good?
Yes.
We're good.
Okay. So this is a slide that another ranger put together, but I'm going to use it because it's a great representation of kind of what we do here at the park. So my name's not on the bottom, but my name is Stephanie, and as Rachel said, I'm a park ranger here at Carolina Beach State Park. I have been here, this will be my third summer, so I guess about 2.5 years. I started out, so I am from Kansas City, so I started out going to school in Kansas City, and I realized that I really wanted to be in a different program. So I ended up at UNCW, and I did the environmental science program there, and it was a great program. I learned a lot. I had great teachers who were still working in the field and also teaching. So not only are you getting the education aspect, you're getting a lot of the current events and what's actually happening in our community here in Wilmington. And so once I got done with school, I graduated in 2014, and it kind of became a journey because I knew I wanted to be a park ranger, but I really didn't know what it was going to take to do that. So the first year out of college, I was a nanny. That was fun. Then the next 2 years after that, I worked at Fort Fisher State Recreation Area as a assistant park ranger. And that was a lot of fun, but there was a lot of trash, there's a lot of cleaning bathrooms, but there was also a lot of turtles, sea turtles, which was exciting. So a lot of the fun natural resource parts of it really outweighed all of the trash and all of the bathroom cleaning. And so that was awesome. And then I spent 2 years applying. I probably had around 30 some interviews for parks just in the state of North Carolina. I finally got on at Carr Lake. And what we do as rangers is we have to go through basic law enforcement training, which is the same thing as like a sheriff's deputy or a police officer goes through. And I failed firearms because I'm a city girl, so that's not something that I ever really did. I didn't go shooting for fun in the backyard, or I didn't go to the farm because, again, I lived in the city. So that's not something that I passed. I was forced to resign from my job. I spent spent the next 3 months focusing on just that. I was lucky enough that my parents were able to help me. And so I hired a firearms instructor. They helped me pass. So then I spent the next year reapplying and trying to get back on. And the very last job that I applied for, I thought this is probably not going to work, but my mother wanted me to apply. So I applied here at Carolina Beach State Park. I knew the staff because I worked at Fort Fisher and came in, interviewed, and I thought, okay, well, if this could work, this is where I wanted to be at the end of the day anyways. This was always the end goal, was to come back to Wilmington to either be here at Fort Fisher. And I got the job. And I was shocked. I had spent the whole last year working at a greenhouse, working at H&R Block's call center. So I did a lot of things I didn't really want to do to get here. But now that I'm here, it's all been worth it. All the tears, all the frustration, all of the interviews, applications, it's all been totally worth it. And I love my job. So with that being said, the job of a ranger sort of entails 3 different things. So the first thing that we do here at the park is law enforcement. And obviously right now in the times that we're in, is law enforcement is a very tricky job to be in. I'm very lucky that as a park ranger, that's not something that we're pushed to do a lot of. Obviously, our main goal is to protect the park. So what I typically tell people is I'm really more of like an adult babysitter, because most of the things that I do in terms of law enforcement is going to be people are drinking inside the park when they're not supposed to be, which everybody who goes camping wants to have a beer, and we all know that. So it's usually just poured out and we move on with our day. Being on this island, we do help out Carolina Beach PD on occasion, depending on what the circumstances are. But my jurisdiction is only the park boundary. So unless they ask for our help, I do not leave the park. The other aspect of my job is natural resource management, which is a huge piece. And today we're actually doing a prescribed burn here at the park. So that's also one of the big ones that we do. And we'll talk a little bit about that. And then the other part of my jobs, the third aspect is education, which is what I'm doing right now. So for parks in general, it's all about balancing those 3 things. So on any given day, I'm always doing something different. Some days I'm answering emails, some days I'm out doing programs, some days I'm out counting fly traps, Venus fly traps, which we'll talk a little bit about. Or I'm telling somebody that who's taking fly traps out of the wild that they're not going to be going home today, that they're going to be going home in cuffs, which has not happened yet, thankfully. But that is always a possibility. It's something that we're always looking out for. So it's parks, parks are created for people to enjoy and for people to recreate. And so again, that balance is a huge part of what we do. And that theme will come up constantly throughout this slide. So we'll go ahead and get started on the slide, if it'll work. Okay, so this slide talks about our mission statement. Again, kind of the overall takeaway from this is it's about a balance of providing visitors a place to recreate, a safe place to recreate, a place where we can provide education, a place where we can talk about conservation and teaching people how we're going to protect this environment so future generations can enjoy it. And so that's a really big thing for me, because growing up, I went to camp and I loved being outside. I love the different ways to recreate, canoe, kayak, fish, and all of that stuff. And so I think it's very important for future generations to have it, because I'm kind of a hippie, and I'm thinking that my way of thinking is if we don't have these things in the future, our society will not flourish, our society will not have food and vegetables, and things like that. And bees, we need bees. So again, here we go with the balance. It's about making sure that we're, protecting everything, but still allowing people to use it. Okay, so a little bit of the park history here. As of today, we have 761 acres in this park. we're not the smallest, but we're very close to one of the smallest parks. We do have 9 miles of trail, but in that 9 miles of trails, we have 13 different types of habitats, which is a lot for such a small area, which is one of the reasons that this park was created in the first place. So the park was established in 1969. Its original name was Masonboro State Park. And eventually it became Carolina Beach State Park. So we are situated, I can't see anybody, but I'm hoping some of you maybe have at least been here once in your lifetime. If you're from Wilmington, I hope at some point in time you've been able to enjoy it. If not, please come out. Please find me. I'd be happy to take you around and show you some of the cool stuff that we have. But this island was not always an island. So Snow's Cut was created, it was essentially kind of bombed to create a passage for ships to come through, for ships to avoid the Cape Fear River, which some of you may be familiar with in terms of its dangerous waters, dangerous drop-offs, and obstacles that was created in the river throughout time. So this Snow's Cut became a passage for boats. So that basically made us an island, and we are situated on part of Snow's Cut and also part of the Cape Fear River. So we're kind of in a unique situation where we're on the edge of a full saltwater area and a brackish area, which is salt and freshwater together. And so that gives us a lot of unique habitats that provides. We have marsh, we have xeric sandhills, we have Sugarloaf, which is a dune, a relic sand dune that's 55 feet above sea level. And so those areas were the reason why this was a state park in the first place. And this will show you the picture of Snow's Cut. So basically this entire land on that bottom picture is all connected. And you can kind of see as they kind of match up in that way. But over time, we're still losing even more land. So there's a park across from us on the mainland. I think it's called Snow's Cut Park. And it is actually being closed because of the amount of erosion that has occurred. A lot of people will come to Snow's Cut to fish on our side, and they end up having to climb down a cliff, which is not really the safest situation, but they do go down there. The fish is aplenty, and people like to hang out and sunbathe. So it's still a place where people can recreate, but it also serves a pretty important part for the shipping business. So here's a map of the park. As you can see on the top here, this is the Intercoastal Waterway, and Snow's Cut right here. And then you've got the Cape Fear River. So it's really interesting sometimes when the tides coming in or going out, you'll see an area of dark water and light water mixing, and you can literally tell the difference of where that line is. And I always find that so fascinating because it's almost like oil and water. Even though these mix, you can see a defined line of where those two waters meet. And then this has all the trails that we have. So some of the unique ecological features that we have here at the park. One of the most important things that we have, if you're from this area, you've probably heard of the Venus flytrap. They only grow within a 60 to 70 mile radius of Wilmington. We are lucky enough here that we have a very healthy population, but it is threatened. It's a federally protected species. Some of the issues that we have in terms of management. So here's where balance comes in again, because as a park, we want people to be able to come see these features, but we also want to protect them. So our balance here is we don't want people to get off the trail because most of our fly traps are off trail. Most people are looking for this big gigantic plant, right, because of Rocky Horror. And then they realize it's this really tiny little like half-inch, sometimes an inch trap that is low lying to the ground, and you can't really see it unless you're truly looking for it. So not only is poaching an issue, which I mentioned earlier, also people trampling it, people's dogs off leash who are also trampling it. Those are some of the things that we have to manage and keep a close eye on. So what we do is we work with UNCW. There's a master student there who has grown Flytrap successfully, and we also have a greenhouse here that we're growing Flytraps in also, so we can put them along a boardwalk for everyone to see, so people don't have to go off trail. And while they may have been planted, they're still native. We've gone out and we've collected seeds, so they're from our natural population. So we're trying to keep everything as native as possible and in the same gene pool, and it's been working really well. We have several that we've just recently put out on the trail, and people are finally calling and saying, oh, I found them, they're so cool. So that's the star of the show. And these are all carnivorous plants, meaning they eat some type of insect, ant, spider, anything that will crawl over it. We also have bladderworts, which has a yellow flower. I always get these confused. It has a yellow flower and it has bladders attached to its roots underground. And when things crawl by, it will suck it up into that bladder. That's another one. We have pitcher plants, which are pretty common. Here in Wilmington, there's several other places that have pitcher plants. I don't want to go into too much detail because I have a lot to cover, but I'll be happy. Again, I'm happy to show y'all if you come to the park, and we can get into the fancy stuff about all of these. And then we also have sundews. I don't think I have a picture of sundews, but that's something that we have. Oops.
Hey, Stephanie, it looks like Ms. Gwen has a question for you.
Okay, what you got?
Yes. You don't have a picture of the bladderwort plant?
Yeah, let me Google one for you.
Okay.
Because they're really neat.
I'd like to see those.
This is a great representation of bladderwort. These are these little things that stick out are roots, and those bladders are attached to the roots in these little areas right here. They're very, very small. They're not big at all. And the butterwort, but here's sundew. This is a sundew, and they're my favorite. I think they're really pretty. But this is the butterwort. It has very sticky leaves at the base of the flower, and things will crawl over and get stuck, and then they excrete a digestive enzyme, and it will absorb the nutrients that way.
Oh, this one on the end, the unique coronavirus plant.
A carnivorous plant, yes.
Carnivorous, wow.
Yeah. And they're
the one that's $280. That one. It looks like it has teeth.
Okay, I think this is just
right there. See that one?
I think that is a fake representation of what a plant looks like. That is not an actual plant.
I thought that was a real. I want one of those.
Well, you can get one for the hefty price of $280 for your garden if you want to stick one in there.
But it's not real.
No, those aren't real. But yeah, so those are some of the other famous plants that we have. So we talked about all of those, and these are the Venus flytraps, and you can see that there are these little trigger hairs on the inside of the leaf, and 2 out of the 3 of those need to be touched in order for that trap to close. So they're pretty fancy. And then here's a picture of them blooming. These white flowers are from the Venus flytrap blooming, and this is where we'll collect seeds. Once that bloom turns completely black, that means the seeds are ready to be harvested, and we'll collect them, and then we'll grow them ourselves.
Ms. Gwen, you have another question?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Why did they stop people from gathering Venus flytraps out of the woods? Was it because they didn't want them to get the stink? Is that the reason?
Yeah, they're a federally protected species because so many people were either taking them from the wild or the areas were being developed and they were being destroyed. They're such a special plant because this is the only place in the entire world that they grow. They grow nowhere else native. This is it. So
because where I was born in Woodside, Hampstead area, guys used to go, we used to call it across the railroad track and dig those traps, and they would sell them. They would, a man would buy them. It was a special man that only bought Venus flytrap, and they would dig them and bring them to him and sell them. And then all of a sudden, they stopped and they said they couldn't dig them anymore.
Yeah, so there's multiple reasons for that. One, the most important is being that they're very special and that this is the only place in the entire world that they grow. But they're also extremely threatened because of people that were picking them up instead of leaving them natural. Again, development, I'm sure that y'all have seen in your time here in Wilmington that everything has just totally exploded. So a lot of the land that had these on them has been completely built up and they won't grow once they've been taken out of the ground. Each individual plant is its own Class H felony. So there was somebody out of like Brunswick County who I think had like 800 or something. So that was 800 individual felonies. Obviously that was pleaded down. But it's really important, again, we want to keep these things natural for future generations to see. I cannot tell you how far people have come to see these because we do hikes on Saturdays and I like to ask people where they're from. I've had people from Asian countries. I've had people from South America who have come to see them. I mean, it's a wonder because no one really understands why this is the only place they grow. Obviously, you've got elevation, you have the weather, the humidity, the climate that we have here. Also, the soil that these are in are more acidic, so they don't provide enough nutrients for the plant, which is probably how they evolved over time to eating insects. So it's important that other people get to witness a plant that only grows in one place.
I think it has to be a real wet area too.
Yes, they like a boggy environment. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mr. George,
so that's where they went together then.
Yes.
Yeah, one of the places that I know of that got Venus flytraps is at Bellamy Elementary School.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you're going around the back of the building. There is like it's like a swamp kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
And they are plentiful there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And I'm not from here, so I don't really even know all of the places that they're at, but there is a national registry where they keep track of where all of these native populations are. We go out every year and count every single one that we have, or try to count every single one, which is crazy. So we just did that last week, and we were able to count about 760. The year before, we counted about 900. So the other part of that helps keep this a healthy population is fire, which will be a couple slides from now, and we'll kind of touch on the fire aspect of it too. Does anybody have any other questions about the carnivorous plants? Okay, we'll keep going. If you think of something, just let me know. So this is another type of habitat, or multiple habitats that we have at the park. We have lime sink ponds, which is a stone that over time has become a depression, and they become vernal ponds, which vernal just means that sometimes they have water and sometimes they don't based on the seasons. But the ponds that we have here have pretty much had water in them for the last 10 years, which is great news because these all serve as habitats for different insects. So we have the lily pond, has a lot of turtles, is a breeding ground for frogs. The cypress pond has a lot of sundews, and they also will have a breeding ground for different types of amphibians. And then our grass pond has water in it as well, and it does serve as a place for other aquatic species, as well as one of the important ones that I enjoy is the dragonflies. It's just the perfect type of habitat for them. So these are a really good place to see 3 different types of ponds, because they're all very visually distinct. Each one of them looks very different. And so here's kind of an image of where they are. So we have the lily pond right here, the grass pond right here, and the cypress pond, which is also very pretty. It's filled with cypress trees. Now, looking at this is the area that has fly traps. This is the only place in the entire park in 761 acres that has fly traps. And they're nowhere else on the island that I am aware of. So that's really unique that we have this one place that has them all. And then here's all of the town. This looks like an older map, so obviously it's going to be more built up. But that just shows where we are in location to Carolina Beach, the city. So we talked about the 13 different types of habitats. This top one is, a lot of these plants right here are called black needle rush. It's a very sharp needle-like plant, and the Native Americans that used to live here would use them as sewing needles to make clothes. And so this is really unique. You have this area that just has these plants right here, but in the back you have this evergreen, longleaf pine savanna, and then there's a very distinct line right here, which is amazing when you think about nature. It's like, how does it create these perfect divisions between different habitats? Well, again, you're going to have a soil change. You're going to have a water change. These areas are going to have brackish waters, and these plants can withstand that. This tree right here could not handle salt water, which is why it's dead. And another name for those trees are called ghost trees. And if you've been downtown on the MLK, I think it's MLK Boulevard, something like that, there's a whole section of ghost trees down there. And that's what happens when you have saltwater intrusion and your plants can't tolerate all of that salt water. So this is a line where that ends, that salt water doesn't reach, and all of these plants can thrive without worrying about being touched with salt water. This is us standing on the top of Sugarloaf Dune looking down at the Cape Fear. This area is extremely important in terms of history. This was used in the Civil War. This was used far before then. Native Americans used to live in this area, the Cape Fear Indians, and unfortunately there's not a whole lot of information about them. They were in a war called the Yamasee War, and it pretty much killed all of them off, and there was only a very few left, and they ended up joining other tribes. But this was a lookout point because, again, you're 55 feet above sea level. This is the highest point, like this side of the mountains. Like, it's very unusual that you have that. And I can't remember who it was that named it, but back then it looked like a mound of sugar. And that was one of the main imports that was coming, and so that's why it got the name of Sugarloaf. And so you can see here that this is a different type of habitat. This is xeric sand ridge, more sand, some shrubby looking plants, but nothing really tall like trees, because when you have a sandy environment, you're not going to be able to have trees that are very tall. So that's why they stay in a shrub format.
Stephanie.
Yes.
Stephanie, this, go back down again, please. Right here, where that tree is.
Mm-hmm.
Would that be a snake area? Do you have snakes out there in that area? Because it looks like it would be an area where snakes would
So snakes could be in that area. They're not huge saltwater fans. You will have some that will hang out near saltwater, but this is really not a great place for snakes because they still like cover, but they still want a place where they can sunbathe as well. So this environment on the bottom would be a little bit better. It would need to be a little bit more wooded, but you would still want, bare ground where the sun reaches for them to, absorb heat and sun and that kind of thing. So speaking of snakes, these are the two most colorful animals that we have at the park. The painted bunting is a migratory bird that comes here in the summer and flies south in the winter. They're, I believe, 6 or 7 different colors. They're very pretty. They have a very pretty song. We do keep a bird feeder up, so if people want to come see them. This is another species that people will come from very far away to see. I've had people come all the way from Maine to just see this bird, which is a little cray-cray to me, but they love this. I mean, this is one of nature's beauties. I was very lucky and privileged to have gone to Africa in 2013. And I've never really been a big bird person, but they have a bird called the lilac-breasted roller, and it is almost a pastel-looking bird with 7 different colors. It is the most incredible thing I have ever seen. And so for, I guess, people here, this bird is one of what they call their lifers, something that they'll keep track of and they'll mark off, and it's been on their to-see list for a while. Then the other very pretty snake that we have is an eastern coral snake. They are venomous. We have another snake called the scarlet king snake, which kind of imitates that snake. So that's kind of how that's their defense mechanism, kind of like that dewlap from that Carolina Knoll that those kids saw. And so I have never seen a coral snake, nor have I seen the scarlet king snake, but that's on my list to see someday too. So here's kind of an overview of some numbers that we have. I will tell you that in years past, our average for people to come visit the park has been about 800,000 people. However, during COVID, a year, yes, ma'am.
Oh, goodness.
So, which seems like a lot. The COVID in 2020, we had 1.6 million people here at the park. And we had no facilities open. There were no bathrooms. There was no campground. There was no visitor center, no marina. And fortunately or unfortunately, I'm not really sure which, it kind of caused me to lose my sanity, but it was a great place for other people to regain their sanity, right? Because everybody was stuck inside. I mean, on the weekends, we would have 20,000 people on the weekend, and there would be just me. There was no support staff, no seasonals. It was 3 rangers that were left to run the park for about 4 or 5 weeks, and it was very difficult. So a lot of our resources were being overused.
And no bathrooms?
No bathrooms. I did have to yell at a lady, unfortunately, who's getting ready to go pee behind a building. I was like, ma'am, I was like, you can't do that. It's public urination. And yes, we're in the woods, but we're still in a very populated area. So along with overuse, we had a lot of people going, number 1 and number 2, out on the trails, which creates kind of a safety issue. It also contaminates the soil. That's a whole nother story. So the management of this park during COVID has been very, very difficult. Our campground is full every single day, even on Mondays and on Tuesdays. And the only month that we really had a break was January. December on the weekends, every day was full. February, the weekends, everything was full. So it's been very difficult for us as a staff to really use that balance again, because you want to make sure that this is still here, but the compaction that is created from, you know, all of these people walking on the trails or getting off trail, creating new trails, those are hard things to fix once they've been done. It takes several years for those plants to regrow, for the shrubs to bounce back if they've been broken off, or if they've been, you know, dogs have walked on. I love dogs, don't get me wrong. I have a poodle myself. It's just that repeated use is very difficult. Campground management issues, again, you know, with COVID, every single site has been full. We only allow 6 people per site and 2 tents per site. This rule, the 2 tents per site, gets broken on a pretty regular basis. Again, I try and really pick my battles these days, just because, you know, if they've got all their tents on the tent pad, I don't say anything. But if they've got their tent, you know, back here in the woods, then I'm going to start getting a little concerned about killing vegetation. And that also will kill people's privacy between each of those sites, because we have that buffer, you know, so people don't have to feel like they're right on top of each other. Trail management issues, which I touched a little bit on, especially with all of the people. One of the main things that we do here for restoration is fire restoration. So we do set prescribed burns or controlled burns. You've probably heard both. That helps. It kind of resets the land. It gives it a new beginning. And typically we like to do these things in the spring, in the spring growing season. That really ramps up their opportunity to grow and come back very quickly. So within a couple of days, we'll start seeing brand new green vegetation right after we have burned, which is a really incredible thing to see life come out of something that used to be known as something very destructive, and it was a big no-no. You know, Smokey the Bear came out and it was like, no, we can't burn. But naturally, before colonists ever came over here, and you had mostly Native Americans, they knew really well how to manage this land. They'd been here way long before us. They were allowing lightning to strike the ground, and that would ignite a fire. They would create fire breaks, which would be a trail like this, or this that we would wet down so it doesn't catch fire. They really, truly had this land flourishing. But once colonists came over, they cut everything down, clear cut it. Obviously, there was a big stigma around the forest where people were afraid of the unknown, afraid of the forest because they didn't know what they would find. You know, also the fact that Native Americans lived in the forest, and they were afraid of what they didn't know. And so I'm not going to talk about the marina because it's not that exciting, but let me get to, we're running out of time. Issues with invasives that we have. This is a picture of a red fox. The red fox was brought over to help with hunting, and it is something that we do have in the park. I have seen them with my own eyes, but they are not native to this area. What is native is the gray fox. Gray fox blends in a heck of a lot better in the vegetation that we have versus the red fox. They still blend, but not as well. Again, remember, you're in a longleaf pine savanna or a brackish area that does burn, and so that gray color is going to mix a little bit better. The other thing that we deal with here, that's a plant, is called Phragmites. It is invasive. It was brought over to help. Their roots were here to help maintain the island and keep it together. It helps with erosion issues, but what they found out was that it did outcompete all of the native flora and fauna. We have a decent area of it, and we cannot get rid of it. So we spray it every year. If you light it on fire, it really just shoots right back up. So that's one of the things in terms of natural resource management that we do have to keep on top of. Hydrilla, we don't have a huge issue with hydrilla. There are other parks that do, but that's not something that we deal with. Lake Waccamaw has that problem, but with salt water, we don't typically deal with that.
What is hydrilla?
Hydrilla is a plant that lives in water, and it multiplies very quickly. It's actually really detrimental to boats. It does get stuck in the motors. It also will it'll outcompete some other plants that maybe aquatic species are eating. So it does affect aquatic species as well. And this is a picture of that Phragmites field that we have. We have some in here, but this is truly the biggest patch that we have. It's about 12 acres. And you can see nothing else grows here. It has outcompeted all of this other vegetation that we have in the park, which is really sad. But all we can do is continue to try and manage it and keep it from spreading. So here's some of that prescribed fire that we discussed. As you can see, these flames are very low to the ground. When we set fire, we're not trying to kill everything like you've seen on TV and wildfires. We're not trying to do that. We're just trying to top kill what's on the soil area. Because longleaf pine savannas, which is very common in Wilmington, I'm sure you have seen many places with longleaf pine, their seed needs bare ground to take root. So when we do that fire, those seeds drop. They have a way better chance to continue regeneration. So when you burn, sometimes fire can get not out of control, but can get very hot, and we will lose some trees, but the benefits of burning far outweigh losing just a couple of trees, because by doing so, we've given the opportunity for 20 trees to start taking root, and we've only lost 1 or 2. So again, here we are with that balance. Yes, we're going to lose some, but we're also going to gain quite a bit more. One of the issues that we do face when we burn is we're on an island, a very populated island. So when we burn, it has to be the perfect wind direction, the perfect climate, the perfect inversion of the air, meaning that we want smoke to rise. We do not want it to just settle onto the ground or go into the city, because then people get a little cranky because we're smoking them out. So we have to be very careful when we burn here. And it's been a very large community effort, and providing education on the benefits of prescribed fire, notifying people so they're not afraid and they're like, oh my gosh, it's on fire. So over the years, the 911 calls that we've received have dramatically decreased because we've gotten out into the community, we've provided education to the people. And once you do that, people really understand, and we explain how safe it is, because our park is kind of like an island. No matter which direction you go, you're going to hit water, you're going to hit a road, you're going to hit a trail, and those low intensity fires, they don't skip over like intense heat like you would out west. And so here's some more pictures. This is the historic site, Fort Fisher Historic Site, where they used to burn the mounds. I was not there for any of that. This picture right here looks like it's off of the Flytrap trail. So this big flame right here is due to the different types of fuels that we have. So I'm referencing to different types of plants and vegetation. Waxy plants are a little bit more volatile. So things that are shiny, they're more volatile, and they will light up a little bit hotter and a little bit more intensely. But as soon as it burns, it's done, it's over, and it goes back towards the ground, kind of like it would right here. Other parts of our management is after hurricanes. This is what it looks like. This was Hurricane Florence. I was not here for this. I was actually living in Kansas City at the time. Absolutely mortified watching all of this occur on television. very devastating. And I'm sure for you all that lived here, my heart was with you. But this is what the park looked like afterwards. It took 3 weeks for them to clean it up and reopen the park. But with trees comes a lot of down trees and high winds and rain. So that's a small part of kind of what we do for hurricanes. Lots of chainsaw action. They do call me the chainsaw princess, which I think is really funny. But I do enjoy doing that. So that's all I have. I kind of went over time. Sorry guys, there's so much information I could fit in. Again, if you guys want to do another talk and I can talk more about the carnivorous plants, I'd love to do that. But does anybody have any questions?
Is the park now open for people to visit?
Yes, we actually never even closed. So anytime you want to come, I'm sure Rachel can give you my email. If you want to come see me, please do. I'll walk you through, I'll show you what we got.
Good.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Stephanie. I appreciate your time. It was really informative.
Definitely.
I've been out there one time, but
Thank you.
getting to hear a little bit about the history and some of those spots is really cool. Getting to understand what it actually is. That's awesome.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. And you native Wilmingtonians probably know way more than I do, and I'd really love to hear your stories. I'm sure you have way more information than I do in terms of history. So again, I'm always here and I'm always looking to learn more. So keep me in the loop if y'all do anything.
Absolutely.
All right.
Awesome.
Stephanie.
You're very welcome.
Thank you again. We appreciate your time. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, you too.
Awesome. I have just a couple of announcements before we wrap up for the day. Let me grab those. So we have, I know Ms. Barbara, you asked about it earlier. We do have our monthly live cooking demonstration this afternoon at 1 p.m. If you're interested, you can join via Zoom, or if you will be, in the Senior Resource Center, you can stop by the cafe. The Zoom link is the same as last month, and if you need it, just let me know. Starting in July, we are going to change our coffee talk time. So right now we meet 9:30 to 10:30. We're going to be starting to meet at 10, and it'll go until 11, and that's going to be in July. And I'll remind you all as we get closer, but I wanted to give you a heads up. This will allow for us to be able to share our presentations with more people, more participants at the Senior Resource Center will be able to join us at that time. So we're going to try that out and see how it goes. So we're excited about that. Virtual bingo is on the 21st, which is this upcoming Monday at 11 a.m. again. So if you're interested in that, I believe I already have you all registered for it. I'll be sure to send you the email with the link again, but it should be the same as last time. But I'll send you an email tomorrow for that on Monday at 11. And Mr. George, I have the answer to your fire extinguisher question. I sent an email and I got the answer. I know, I'm really excited to share this with you too. Let's see. And I'll forward this email to you, but I thought this was really great information for everybody. So the first thing that you want to do is check the gauge on the front. If the needle is in the green area, it's a yellow needle. If it's in the green area, you're good. If it's not, it is trash and you should throw it away. But if it is in the green area, you need to ask yourself, how long has it been sitting still? If it's been longer than 5 years, you need to get a new one. The life of a fire extinguisher can be prolonged by turning it over and using your hand to hit the bottom. It loosens the powder inside of the extinguisher. That will help keep it loose so it won't sit stagnant for as long. She also recommended that you keep it not under your kitchen sink and keep it somewhere where it's easily accessible in case you need it. Wendy, who gave us the presentation from the fire department with the gentleman who's a firefighter, this is information all from her. She said if you have any other questions or specifics that you need answered, to give her a call and she'd be happy to help. But hopefully that kind of gives you a little bit more insight to that.
Thank you. Yeah.
You're very welcome. Of course.
Cause no, it was, I don't know why my mind was going. I know that some fire extinguishers can be recharged, but then there are others that can't, that you just trash them. And I wasn't sure exactly. I know like a the big boys, you can kind of like dump the powder out, refill it, and then get a new date, because they'll do that
Sure.
when you go around and check them. But I wasn't sure on the smaller ones like I got.
Right. Right. So yeah, as long as it's in that green area on the gauge and it's been less than 5 years, it sounds like you're in good shape. But I guess if you're questioning it at all, I would just maybe recommend getting a new one. But if you have any other questions, or if anybody has any questions, Wendy will be joining us in July again. Or I can give you her information and she'd be happy to talk you through any of that. But do any of you all have any questions or anything for me?
Oh, that was it. That was
No?
it. Yeah.
But I do have one question.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't have a fire extinguisher. Should I get one?
Definitely. You can pick those up at Walmart, a local hardware store, Lowe's, Home Depot, anything like that. So, and if you wanted to talk with Wendy about that, if you had any questions, let me know. I can give you her phone number and she'd be happy to talk. But awesome. Well, thanks, guys.